Hi Year 13, today I'm going to show you some practicals to show some typical properties of transition metals. So I'm going to start with the first practical. I'm going to add 5 centimetres cubed of copper sulphate to sodium hydroxide, and then add some sodium potassium tartrate, and then heat it with glucose. So while I'm doing that, try and think about what's happening while I'm doing that. Okay, so 5 centimetres cubed of sodium hydroxide, that's about a pipette and a half full. But obviously I'm measuring it really accurately. And also the same volume of copper sulphate. And you'll see something that you've seen before. So this is formed a precipitate, gelatinous blue precipitate. So the next bit, I'm going to add 1 gram of the potassium sodium tartrate. My balance here. It's kind of a crystalline substance that looks a little bit like weird sugar. Okay, add that carefully to my boiling tube. And then, before I start heating, I need to add my glucose. So see if you can think about any links that you might be able to make here to other subjects. So the glucose is powdery as well, so about 1 gram of that. A little bit more. Okay. So now I'm going to add that to my boiling tube as well, and then I'm going to heat it strongly. So give it a little shake. Okay, so I'm just going to direct this over here now. Okay, so I need to turn my Bunsen onto a strong blue flame, looking carefully for any changes in colour. Okay, it's already working. Perfect. So you can see that there's been a distinct colour change there. So for the next practical, I want you to watch carefully and see if you can notice 2 changes. Okay, so we're starting with copper 1 oxide, which is different from copper 2 oxide. So if I just take out a bit and show you, it's quite a deep, dark, reddy colour. Okay, so bear that in mind. I'm only going to use a tiny bit of that, so really only a small bit required. I have said on the instructions there 0.1 grams, but it really needs to be very, very small amount. Okay, I think that's probably about right. Okay, and now I'm going to add a bit of sulfuric acid, not very scientific, about I can't actually get the lid off. About a quarter of a boiling tube. So, now you won't see very much at first. You need to heat this in order to see a change. Probably could actually just pour it in. Okay. So I'm just going to move this. So heating strongly. Flame. Look carefully for 2 observations. Okay, so looking very carefully. Just going to continue to heat for a few moments longer, just to hopefully accentuate the observations that we can see there. Hold it against my white lab coat, you might be able to see clearer. Just as a quick comparison, I'm just going to show you what happens when we react copper 2 oxide with sulfuric acid, so you can compare the 2 reactions. So that. Just adding sulfuric acid again to this. Some of you may have remembered this from GCSE. And going to heat strongly again. And as I've added so little, we can see that the reaction has gone to completion entirely. So for the third reaction, we're looking at the reaction between copper sulfate and concentrated hydrochloric acid. So I'm going to put those 2 together in a boiling tube. Then I'm going to split that half and half into 2 test tubes and add water to one of them, and then water and dilute ammonia to the other one. Okay, so copper sulfate, about 1 centimetre depth of of the copper sulfate into my boiling tube. Tiny bit more. Okay. Now, got gloves on now for the use of the concentrated hydrochloric acid, which should be kept in the fume cupboard. So, hopefully you should see what happens when I add it in. Look carefully. Might see some fumes. Keep doing this until there's no visible change. Lovely green colour. Okay, so just going to put the lid back on there. I don't really want to leave that open. Okay, so now I'm going to decant some into this test tube. And small amount into the other one. Okay. So, into the first one, I'm going to add water and then dilute ammonia. A little shake from side to side. A little bit more. So you can see that that has definitely changed colour. So that was just with the water. The next one I'm going to add water first and then the dilute ammonia. So that vibrant green. Okay. And now dilute ammonia is in the form of ammonium hydroxide. Look carefully. Still need to add a little bit more. It's just about starting to do it at the top. Watch carefully. There we go. Look at the difference between the top and the bottom. Might run out of space here. I'm just going to tip between two test tubes just to make it slightly easier to mix. And pour some out as well, maybe. So still adding my dilute ammonia. Hold it against the white lab coat. You can see the colour change at the top. I think that might be all I can fit into that one. Hold it right at the top. So you can definitely see the colour difference between the top part and the bottom part there. Just to make that a little bit more obvious, I've decanted a much smaller quantity. I'm going to add the dilute ammonia to this so that you can have a better representation of the colour. Hopefully. It's definitely showing more. Slightly more obvious than the previous attempt. I'm actually going to jump to the last two next. So we have already seen this bit before in this experiment, in the first experiment up here, but I'll show you it again, and then we'll also look at the last bullet point too. Okay, so in both of these test tubes, I'm just going to add about centimetre or two depth of the copper sulphate, blue copper 2 sulphate, and then to one of them I'll add sodium hydroxide, which is a precipitation reaction, and to the other one I'm going to add the dilute ammonia in the form of ammonium hydroxide. So I've got my two test tubes. So first one, I'm going to add sodium hydroxide carefully. So remember what is happening during a precipitation reaction and what I have here in my precipitate. Okay, and then to the other one I'm going to add my dilute ammonia. You might have already done this one before, maybe in year 12. So similar but very different in colour. So I'll show you the two side by side. You can see here we've got a much darker blue precipitate than in this one. Okay, so lots of pretty colours going on here. So now for the final practical. Think about this, you might have seen this somewhere before. So I'm going to start off with my copper sulphate in a boiling tube. Just doing it in a boiling tube so that we can see the colours easily, and also so we don't run out of room like we do sometimes in the test tubes. So now I'm going to add potassium iodide until it stops changing colour. So think about when you've seen this before. hold it up against my white lab coat. Okay, so that should be enough now for the first reaction to have finished. And now I'm going to add sodium thiosulfate. Okay, so there's already a change in colour at the top. I want all of it to change that colour. Give it a little shake side to side. Okay. It's a kind of mauvey, lilac-y colour at the moment. Add a little bit more. It hasn't quite finished the reaction yet. Okay, nearly there. Okay, so that's the final result there. Okay, Year 13, so I hope you've enjoyed seeing these chemical reactions, and we'll be explaining the observations in our next lesson.